Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm April Haberman, and I'm here today with Kim Hart. We're two of the three co founders of Medovia. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Medovia, we provide education and support for menopause in the workplace. The three of us are passionate about bringing accurate information and resources to women so that they can make healthy choices for their overall well being, as well as thrive in the workplace. Before we go into today's session, it's important to note just a couple of things. We recognize that everyone's experience with menopause is different. Everyone has their own opinions on how they want to manage menopause, and then certainly have their own opinions on and comfort level on the conversations they want to have around menopause. And we also recognize that people of different gender expressions and identities also experience menopause, and our programs are inclusive for everyone, even though we refer and reference women, she, and her throughout our presentations. So let's move on and take a look at what the agenda is for today. We are going to be building the business case for menopause in the workplace programs. We're going to talk through the why, the what, and the how. We're going to talk about why menopause is so important in the workplace, what menopause is. Kim's going to jump in here in just a bit and share some basic facts about menopause so that we're all on the same page. And then we'll look at how you can become a menopause friendly employer. And we should have time at the end to take questions. So feel free to pop those into the chat if you have questions throughout the presentation. This is recorded. So if you have to hop off early, no worries. We'll post this on our LinkedIn page after the session. So let's dive right in. Menopause has typically been something that has been behind the scenes and really isn't something that has been talked about openly. But the good news is that that's changing. We have influencers and celebrities like Oprah, Drew Barrymore, Maria Shriver. You can see this photo that we have on the slide. We have influential people that are beginning to open up the conversation and really pull back that curtain and bring menopause center stage. And given that, now is a time for us to begin talking about it in the workplace as well. So, why is that? Why is menopause so urgent and important? I'm going to share a few slides here with you and talk through a lot of statistics and facts. We want to start off here by looking back in history. I think it's important to look back and where we've come from and where we are today as it relates to menopause. And if we look back 100 years ago, the average lifespan was 59, and the average age to reach menopause was 57. So menopause really was the end of life. We didn't have to consider menopause in the workplace. But if you take a look at this slide, fast forwarding to today, our average lifespan is well into our 80s, if we're lucky enough, and we're working well into our late 60s or 70s. The average age to reach menopause is 51, and that's for a white woman. We know that that age is a little bit younger or less for other ethnicities, ethnic groups. And then if you consider perimenopause, the average age to reach perimenopause is 41, you can see that we're spending a third to a half of our lifetime in some stage of the menopause at work. And the Menopause Society calculates that by 2025, which is just next year, that there will be 1.1 billion postmenopausal women worldwide. And women that are 50 plus are the fastest growing workplace demographic in the US today. However, and I'm going to give the little PS here on the side, the majority of people are unwilling to have menopause related conversations with their manager or to ask for the support that they need. So there's a lot of work to be done. So let's take a look at the business case. This is really where the rubber meets the road and where a lot of organizations sit up and take notice, because this is where it hits the wallet, so to speak. If you look at this, 1 in 4 women consider leaving the workplace due to menopause symptoms, and 1 in 10 will actually leave the workplace. 14% reduce their hours to part time, and 8% won't put their name in the hat for promotion. According to, excuse me, the Mayo Clinic, based on workdays lost alone, it's estimated an annual loss of $1.8 billion dollars in the US. And if you take into account medical expenses, that number increases to 26.6 billion. And not only are these numbers really staggering if we just stop and pause to think about it, but it's important to point out that this is a stage in women's lives where they're at the height of their careers. If we look at that age range of 45 to 55, we're at the height of our careers. We have a lot to give. For many women, we're done raising our kids. They're not little anymore. We're empty nesters, and we have 100% to give to our careers, and we want to make a positive impact. So if we're losing women due to menopausal symptoms, we're losing a knowledgeable, talented pool of individuals, and that's not just a loss for them; it's a loss for employers as well. I want to just briefly touch on the legal case here. I've mentioned the demographic and business case, but there is a legal case to be made. And although in the US, there's no federal law that explicitly provides rights that will comprehensively fill in these gaps and address needs related to menopause, there are anti discrimination protections that could apply. If you look at the Family Medical Leave Act, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, the American Disabilities Act, Occupational Safety and Health Act, and then, of course, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. These all protect workers from discrimination on the basis of sex, gender identity, race, age, and disability. It's a long list. So there is work to be done. There's no broad stroke law that covers menopause, but there are these other protections that could be used accordingly. We're certainly seeing in other countries like the UK, tribunals are being brought forth and women are winning these cases. So it's just something to be aware of if you are a business owner. So let's move on to last but certainly not least, the social responsibility case here. Um, it's the right thing to do. Bringing menopause workplace programs, folding them into your organization is the right thing to do. 3 in 4 women will experience menopause symptoms, and 1 in 4 will experience them in a dramatic way where it affects them both at work and at home. And yet, 45% of women won't disclose to their manager that they're experiencing these symptoms in a dramatic manner for fear of either losing their job or being discriminated against. So there is a lot of work to be done here. It's interesting. We were having a conversation with our UK colleagues just last week, and they were looking at disparity between a couple of reports that had come across their desk. And I'm not going to quote these statistics exactly 100% because I'm not sure of the exact percentages, but there was one report from organizations that were surveyed that said that 60% of them were offering menopause support programs within their organization. It was a nice pat on the back for themselves. And then they had a report come across their desk from union members and employees that showed that only 20% of them felt like they had menopause support within the workplace. So there's definitely a gap. And what this says is that, workplace programs aren't just a one and done. This is really cultural shifts that need to happen. And Kim's going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And given that, I'm actually going to shift gears here just a bit because there is a lot of misinformation about menopause, and it can be quite confusing. And as leaders and managers within organizations, it's important to have that accurate data. So, Kim, let's take a look at menopause facts, and I'm going to hand the stage over to you and let you take it away.
Thanks, April. I always love hearing all those statistics. It's a good reminder why we're doing what we're doing. But on this, I'm going to move forward because there's a lot of questions and misinformation on what is menopause and what does it mean and what are all these terms and what happens? And, all I know usually is that there's hot flashes, right? And it's just more than that. So on this slide, you see Perimenopause is when your hormones start to change, when symptoms can start to show. April mentioned that average age is 41, and it's common for women to hit menopause, which talk next, around 51. That's the average age. And so that's a long time in that as your hormones are all over the place, kind of looking at what those symptoms are, and everyone's journey is different in that space. So we hope to bring information and knowledge so that people can make choices and be able to manage their health the way they want. When we say menopause, it's actually the ceasing of menstruation. And once you've not had a period for 12 months, on that day of 12 months, you are clinically hit menopause. So, yay, you get to celebrate. And it's one of those things that you don't know until it actually happens because you can't predict when that's going to happen. But that's the general definition of what menopause is. And then when you go to post-menopause, it's all the time after that for the rest of our lives. The symptoms may be different, the experiences may be different, but that's what you're working up towards in terms of menopause and postmenopause. I'm going to switch slides here and talk about some of the averages, and we've referred to that a little bit and throughout this conversation, but you'll hear the averages of when things happen for people in this space. And so the average age, as we mentioned, is 41 to hit menopause, but you can go through the whole range on that. Late menopause can happen in your 60s, and early menopause can happen in your early 40s. Premature menopause, we have seen cases of girls who are having menopausal symptoms, and it's not that huge number of people, but it can happen. And then there's also surgical menopause or illness menopause. Oftentimes, women who have had cancer and chemo and those kinds of things, they'll hit menopause like overnight in terms of what their symptoms and their experience is. So these are good averages to just keep in mind as we're thinking about what we mean when we say this, and as women are navigating in the workplace. And then this is one of my favorite slides, actually. Everyone's journey can be different, and there are lots of different symptoms associated with menopause. If you look at the physical symptoms, such as hot flashes and night sweats, which you hear about a lot, other people experiencing things like achy joints, changes in hair and skin and nails. There are symptoms such psychological symptoms, brain fog, losing confidence, anger, emotional anxiety. We often hear people say I just don't feel like myself anymore. I'm not sure what's happening to me. I can't explain it. I feel like I'm going crazy a little bit. And for me, I had brain fog. Like, it wasn't debilitating, but I was afraid to talk. I was afraid to get involved with conversations because I couldn't remember what the next word was. I couldn't put words together, which made me anxious. And again, caused a lot of issues for me. What Until I realized, okay, let's look at how I can tackle this and not feel this way once I realize it's menopause. So if you look at the sort of wheel in which menopause happens, um, things that you don't expect go on top of each other, right? So if you have night sweats and you can't sleep and you wake up with fatigue and then you have difficulty concentrating at work, which makes you feel like you have the brain fog where you can't come up with what the word is. You lose confidence, which makes you anxious, which keeps you up at night. And the cycle goes on and on. Now, these are just common symptoms of what some people face, but they're not isolated and alone. The symptoms, and if you are having those or you know people that are having those, it's totally normal in this space. So we want to identify those symptoms that are causing the biggest challenges and figure out how we can help support women in the workplace manage some of these things. it's not, some of these are not hard for people to manage, but it is just becoming aware of what those are. Um,
And Kim, can I jump in here too?
yeah,
I think as you're talking about this and this cycle of symptoms, I think it's also important to note that usually if we can identify the root cause, right? So in this case, night sweats, right? If we can identify that root cause and manage that symptom, all of these other symptoms begin to go away as well. So it can look a little bit overwhelming when you look at this graph, but there is good news here. So I
yeah.
just wanted to point out the good news.
I appreciate that, and until you realize that this is what's happening from a menopause position, you don't even know how to go to the basics of what's happening other than you know you gotta get out of your bed and change your sheets at night,
Yeah.
which is it's not great for anyone to show up right the next day, experiencing that. So, and then I think that it's important to just look at, there are lots of different ways to approach managing your symptoms. There's the medical, the medical route where you find a doctor and you look at supplements or hormone therapy, which is an option for many, and research shows that it makes a huge difference. I think that uh, this is a hard conversation and it's very hard to find the right doctor, but keep going until you find the right doctor. And we'll happily help you with that. And we'll tell you all of our contact information after this conversation. But talking to a doctor really helped me. There's some complementary type of support you can help with yourself, herbs and vitamins that people take during this time. Um, you need to do your research there, and make sure that you have really good supplements, whole and natural supplements, because the body needs that at this time to make sure that you're not bringing in chemicals that can hurt your body. But there are really definite, great complementary um, things that you can add that help with some of those symptoms. I'm a health coach, so I always say that the way you managed your life before this is not the way that you can manage your life now and be able to really get through this time. So there are probably some lifestyle changes, a healthy whole diet, exercise, weight bearing activities, um, and eliminating things that are not complementary for your body, caffeine and alcohol, gluten for some. And those are just things worth looking at as you're trying to figure out how to take care of yourself. And the last one is your mindset. You got to think differently about this. Breath work and meditation and yoga and just quiet and slow it down a little bit often helps bring some peace of mind. Um, Cognitive behavioral therapy is really shown to help help during this phase, and that can empower people to be able to know where they are and where they're going, to have some support there. So yeah, there's just ways to think about this as you're going through this experience that can help can help you rather than just suffering. And as an employer, you want to give people space to be able to take care of themselves and have the information that they need, so that they know that these are the kinds of things that they need to do to help manage their symptoms. And so it's just a sort of good reminder that it's not just a pill, but there's other ways to also get through some of this.
And that's usually a combination of everything,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
not just one path for everyone.
Which is right, which is this next slide. Like, everyone is different, you know. 1 in 4 go through no symptoms. 3 in 4 will experience symptoms. 1 in 4 have serious symptoms that really impact their life. Um, I tell everybody all the time, you don't have to suffer through it or suck it up like our moms did. And really, the research says that the more you talk about it, the more acceptance that you have, the easier the symptoms get, which makes sense. You're not bottling it up inside and trying to manage this on your own. So we really try and have the conversations and bring the awareness so that people feel like they're listened and heard, and taken care of, and know how to take care of themselves. And, everyone is different and every employer is different. And so just keep that in mind. If you're an employer or want to provide this to an employer, there's a lot of ways to tackle this, and it doesn't have to be expensive. And just having a conversation about how to support the women in your workplace, it really is the first step. And I think it's a way to help people feel like they're welcome and where they are. So, how do you develop a menopause friendly strategy? I think is what we're really talking about here. And April, we get lots of questions, but why do I have to do this? What if I just as a workplace ignore menopause? I mean, it will cost nothing to do nothing. So why don't I just do that?
Yeah. I want to come back to your last statement, though, because you said it will cost nothing to do nothing. And just rewind here back to the business case slide that I had up before. There is a financial cost and a financial loss for organizations if they're not folding in menopause programs within the workplace. Something that we didn't talk about before is the cost to replace someone. We looked at loss of revenue, loss of profit due to menopause symptoms, medical expenses, but there's a cost to replacing employees within the workplace as well. And I know you know this firsthand with your HR background. It costs on average of almost $35,000 to replace a person that's earning just $42,000 a year. And as that compensation increases, so does the cost to replace that person. It's very time consuming. So there is a definite cost to not doing anything. And then I think, we talked about this throughout the presentation as well. Women are leaving the workplace as a result of not being able to manage their menopause symptoms or not feeling safe in talking to their managers and HR individuals. I think women are going to continue to leave the workforce if we don't fold in menopause programs in the workplace. And that gender gap is going to continue to grow. um, it's also, I think, an environment right now where we're seeing a lot of femme health organizations popping up. There are certainly benefits that we can add on as organizations to support women even beyond what we do. We're a nice complement to those femme health organizations because we can actually provide that cultural shift, help you provide that cultural shift within your organization. But you're seeing employers begin to offer menopause benefits, and women are smart, and they don't have to suffer in silence. And so, if an employer is not offering those benefits and support, women will move to a different organization. We want fair compensation, we want a voice at the table, and we want to be supported through this time period because we recognize that we are in the workplace for a significant portion of the menopause journey. I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens in 2024. If you look at reports, it's showing that organizations are becoming a little bit more menopause savvy and interested in those programs. And certainly we can help. There's a lot of other organizations out there that are doing the same thing. And I'm going to ask you this because it's kind of on the heels of what I just said. Specifically, what can employers do to support menopausal women in the workforce? What does it look like for an organization to provide that menopause support?
Yeah,
Take it away, our
it's a
professional.
really Yeah, it's a really good question. And before I answer that, I think the thing that is amazing to me when by 2025, when billions of women are in menopause across the world, what kind of power, what kind of energy, what kind of voting with our feet can we do to support women when that happens? I'm excited for what 2024 and 2025 can bring to that. So, yeah, I think employers need to consider a couple of different things. One is there's a lack of knowledge and awareness and information around this. And so without sort of understanding and setting what that is, how do we even start? Women don't want to talk about it because there's so much fear and guilt and shame and stigma around the fact that they're old in the workplace now.
Mm.
And we haven't looked at this in a way to figure out that it's normal, and so many healthcare providers are brushing you off. Yeah, I tell the story that I went into my primary care doctor and she handed me a book on menopause that I already owned, and that was the conversation. Right?
It's a good book, but
It's a great book. It's the Menopause Manifesto, in case anybody wants to. The author, whose name escapes me, just wrote a new book around blood, period blood. So she's definitely a leader in this space. But first we got to get people talking about it. We have to open up the conversation about menopause. We need to create an environment where people feel comfortable, open without having to be embarrassed about it. Secondly, we need to educate both the women and the managers and the HR departments. As we said, there's a lot of myths out there, and just by training employees in that space, an organization can make women feel like they're part of it from a belonging perspective. And accurate information, right,
yeah,
creates an inclusive environment. And then the third thing is really like, what kind of accommodations can we put in place? Sometimes it's just a fan, or comfortable temperatures, or flexible work environments. When I have trouble sleeping, I have the benefit of not having to have my butt in a seat at 7 a.m. to be able to adjust to that. So that's helpful. And finally, put a policy in writing. It's not a one and done, and then you're done with, you got a policy and thanks. No, but write a policy and help people know that this is what we believe in. We support all people. It's a great first step, and then adding some of those other things in, employee training, manager training, accommodations. I think employers will really go a long way to help supporting women in the workplace and make them feel included, and part of the important part of the entire organization. So it's not a huge change, but it is just recognizing and talking about it, I think is really helpful.
yeah.
So,
In all levels, right? Up
yeah,
and out.
yeah, for
So
sure.
cultural shift. And many, many organizations just don't know how to do that, or where to start, or how do I add on a menopause piece to my policy. And that's where we can help. And there's actually a question coming in right now, and I'm gonna pass it off to you, because it's on the same topic, Kim. How does someone approach a manager or their organization if they want to bring in menopause in the workplace programs? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that that's a scary thing to talk about, but I think from an employer perspective, and with the knowledge that you have now, and that will probably gain more, talk to the benefits department. Let them know that you've seen other employers do training and support women in menopause. Um, there are side benefit companies that come along and help provide additional benefits, but really just like, I feel like we need to be more inclusive of all people. And it would be great if we could start talking about this. It shouldn't be a scary conversation, but you can talk about it in terms of what you hear other companies are doing, right? The talking with your manager. Oh, thank you, Allison. Jen Gunther. Yes, her blood book. Oh,
Enter.
great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. I've been listening to her podcast, or her book on Audible. So thank you. And then talking to your managers, I think that I didn't flat out say, "Hey, manager, I got some menopause issues and I need you to accommodate me." Okay. No, but what I did say is, I'm having some health concerns and I'm managing through them. I just want you to know that if I don't show up in the way that you're used to having me show up, it's because I'm working through it, and I appreciate and I thank you for your support, right? And I think that that's an easy conversation, and a good manager should want to care and support you in that. So yeah, that's a good place to
It's a
start.
great question, and thank you for your insight, Kim. It makes me think about an organization that we were talking to, who had an employee, a male-owned company, who had an employee that wasn't acting normal, for lack of a better way of saying that, just wasn't herself, was a go-to person, right arm person within the organization, and her attitude had changed, and she was very anxious. She really couldn't handle the day-to-day stress with her just normal job responsibilities. And we're progressing this employee, this business owner, towards termination. And the simple question was, how old is your employee? Could she be going through perimenopause, menopause? What do you mean? Right. And it's a little bit of education to say, well, here are the symptoms, a lot of what you just talked through, broad stroke. Have you had the conversation with her? Could it be? And fast forward, this employee is still with the organization today because the conversation was opened up, and because there were resources provided for her to get the help that she needed. And so, that's employee retention at its best, right? And that's what we're talking about. It's just to open up the conversations, bring awareness programs into organizations so that at every level, everyone understands what is happening with menopause. And it is a very natural, normal biological change that happens for most. If we're talking about surgical menopause, it certainly doesn't feel natural or
Yeah.
normal when you're thrown into that. But it is just a normal change that our bodies go through. So, okay. So another question that we often get is, how do I find a doctor? You mentioned earlier that it took you time, Kim. I know you, and I know your story. It took you time to find a provider, beyond the one that handed you the book. And the good news here is that there are so many more resources available. An individual could go to the Menopause Society, type in your zip code, and it will give you a list of providers that are certified through the Menopause Society to provide menopausal care. And there are a lot of other fem health organizations out there. As I mentioned earlier, there's some great organizations that are providing menopause support. I'll name a few here, and I'm going to forget some, so apologies in advance. But there is Geneve. We're familiar with them because they're in our backyard here in Seattle. MIDI Health. There's Maven. There is, gosh, help me out here. We've got
Carrot fertility and uh,
India Health. We love
Pandy. Yeah,
Health, Menopause RX. I mean, there's just so many wonderful organizations that, if you even just did a Google search, you can find. And some of those will need to be a part of a benefit package with an organization, but some of them offer individual care as well, and they're very highly respected organizations. So that's the good news, is that there are a lot of resources. And then Allison said Evernow. Yes, absolutely. They are a wonderful resource as well. There's so many. That's the good news, that we could probably keep adding these into the stream. And if we've forgotten anyone, we certainly can post it in notes with the recording. But it's not hard to find a good provider. And I think we've said this time and time again with people that we work with. If you're not happy with the provider that you're with, go find another one. There's no rule saying that you have to stay with someone that's not giving you the right answers, or the support that you need. So it's okay to divorce your healthcare practitioner and move on, right?
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I did. And
Friends.
and sometimes it takes a little shopping until you find the right person that, really matches what you need and what they'll be able to provide for you. So,
And I
uh,
think too, there is if you prepare for that visit, if you come in armed with information, that appointment is going to go a lot smoother and you're more likely to come away satisfied with the resources that you need. So, there are a couple of resources out on our website that could be helpful. There is a menopause friendly checklist for organizations. If you want to download that and give yourself kind of a benchmark temperature read, where are we as far as menopause policies? There's also our blog on our website, and there's a wonderful resource there, or blog post, how to prepare for your appointment. And Kim wonderfully wrote that article, and it takes us through, step 1 to 10 on how to prep for that. One being track your symptoms. We have a symptom tracker out on our website as well that you can download and that we offer through our programs when we come into organizations. That's the best thing that you can do is start to track your symptoms so that when you go into your healthcare provider, you have that information for him or her. And speaking of resources, I'm going to pop this slide up on the screen. If you are interested in Medovia coming alongside your organization to provide support, you can either just scan this QR code, you can reach out to us at info@medovia.com. And if you're an individual and you'd like health coaching or individual support through our memberships, for example, you can find us at medovia.com/individual support. I don't see any more comments right now. Kim, do you have anything else that you would like to tell our audience while we have them here?
yeah, I could talk all day on this topic. But I think we've covered a good overview, and we will plan on doing these LinkedIn Live sessions, probably monthly, definitely monthly, on various topics. So if there are topics that you are interested in or would like to participate in, please let us know. We're building out our plan as we go forward into this year of 2024, and we thank you for joining us and for supporting us along the way. We're really excited about the possibilities of changing workplace cultures and normalizing menopause conversations for women. So we love when others come along on the journey with us. So thank you.
Great. Well said. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Have a great day.